Okay. Linnea, I think you are a new person on this meeting. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, my name is Linnea Meyer and I'm in Salina. I'm a fairly new member of the local LWV, so I'm just trying to pick up on what in the world's going on and what it's all about.
Okay, thank you very much for being here. And
Thank
we go
you.
on to Charlie Crabtree is from Lawrence. And let's see. Kathleen Morrow. You're in Kansas City, right? And you're muted, I believe. Jean Lee is on. She's in Manhattan. And she is the state membership chair. Olivia, our office administrator. And Kristen from
Thank you, sweetie, for bringing my sassy back. Thank you.
And if you aren't actually talking, you might mute yourselves.
That's hard.
And Janet, and I always say your last name wrong, Janet. Malkovich. And you're in
Yep.
Kansas City or
Yes,
Johnson
Johnson
County.
County. Mhm.
Right.
As is Kathleen Morrow. Kathleen, you're still on mute.
They told us to mute. So I did.
Right. Okay.
So now I'll go back.
All right. And Paul Johnson, of course, our main legislative contact who knows all about what's going on.
I wish it were possible.
Right. I know the feeling, Paul. Well, we were starting with the voter and election law update. Does either Martha or Jackie have that update for us?
Yeah.
Caught us on a good day. We just had a conversation with our attorney today. Yay.
Yeah. Martha, did you want to talk about,
Go ahead, Jackie. You're on a roll. You go right ahead.
okay, well, Martha and I meet every Wednesday morning. And so this morning we discussed this, and we also realized that this is the first time I think that this group has really been able to be together for a while. And so we thought it might be helpful to go over just real quick, a little bit about the differences between advocates and our Legislative Observer Corps, because we change that configuration just slightly for this coming session and in the future. So through looking at how other leagues divide the workflow and divide the tasks with this kind of work, this is how we kind of came up with this. So we're not just inventing this from scratch, but advocacy is very separate from the legislative observers. The legislative observers are the folks that observe the sessions either in person or live streaming or audio if that's what they want. But now we can live stream everything too. And they will have a form. Kristen has prepared a form that you will use that to report on what you're hearing. That person is not the same person that then goes and calls on legislators and does that kind of work. Seal is the advocacy chair. And so Seal is kind of overseeing the observers, but Kristen is the observer coordinator. So we just want to make sure that when we are working and watching these committees, that we are very clear about our role. When we are, these kinds of, there's going to be some overlap, right? Because the observers are watching the issues that our advocacy folks are also watching. So we're all watching the same things, but an observer is just really separate from an advocate. You can have all the opinions, of course, that you want. That we welcome that. We just ask that you keep your observer hat separate from any kind of advocating that you would do. So when you're functioning as an observer, you're recording on what happened, you're maybe noticing, oh, this was talked about in this committee meeting, this would be really helpful. You're going to send that information to Kristen and Seal, and then they will share that with Martha and myself, and we will talk about, oh, do we need to do an action alert? And if we need to do an action alert, then that will possibly come out of that. So you will help the advocacy happen. But as far as observing, it's a slightly different role. And so the reason why it kind of goes back a long way, in that the league for a long time just was observing. That's all they did. They did not used to do as much advocacy as we do now. We see them as both very, very important. We just want to make it real clear what you're doing when you're doing it. So Seal is our official lobbyist, and she has been in that role for a while, and she will continue that this next session. Martha and I can also speak on behalf of the league. So we will, and Kristen will possibly be brought in at times as well. But mostly Kristen's going to work just with the advocates, just with the observers on observing. So I hope that didn't confuse that, but it's something that we have not always been real careful about. We always just kind of been like advocacy / observers. Well, they're different. They work together, but they also have very different functions. So that's what we're hoping to work on and make sure we're clear about as this year goes on. If you have questions, of course, please ask us. I just wanted to bring that at the beginning here. As far as the lawsuit, it doesn't really affect this group. Thank goodness this group can just go on and keep doing whatever what we want to do. So that's great in that this is one area in which we can really put a lot of our energy, because as many of you are aware, we are involved in a lawsuit. We are co-plaintiffs with Loud Light and Kansas Appleseed and the Topeka Independent Resource Center. And we've actually suspended our in-person voter registration since July 1, since the new law went into effect regarding knowingly impersonating election officials. So we had some concerns. We have asked for clarity. We actually asked for a temporary injunction so that part of the law would not take effect. Unfortunately, it did take effect, and then we had to wait until the end of September to find out that the judge was not going to give us the temporary injunction because she does not read the law the way that we were reading it. So we appealed that decision, and that was sent. So normally it would just go to the Kansas Court of Appeals. We actually asked the Supreme Court if they would allow us to bypass the appeals court, because we actually ultimately feel that these both cases, the main case and the temporary injunction, will both end up in the Supreme Court. But they denied our right. They denied it. They denied our request, I should say, not a right. They denied our request. So we found that out just yesterday, I think. Was it yesterday or was it the day before? It was Monday. Thank you. It's a fast moving time here. Yes, we found that out Monday afternoon that they denied our request. So we have yet to hear what appeals panel. There's a panel of judges for the appeal. We found out today when we talked with our attorney. So we will find out soon what appeals court, what judges will hear that temporary injunction. Meanwhile, the attorneys know our concern about we got to be able to register voters soon. So we're hoping we can get something. We'll figure something out. We're hoping soonish, but I can't give you dates because they don't know dates, but they understand the need to get going in this next election cycle. So that is, we are aware of that. The main case is still in district court. We have the same judge about who we had with the temporary injunction issue. So unfortunately, that also probably doesn't bode very well for the at least that part of the whole case, but we're still going through with that, and no scheduling has happened. We have requested to get schedules and get on the docket for those to get at least the first part of that case going, a discovery part, I believe is what it's called. That has not been, the judge is just not doing anything with it right now because the state filed a motion to dismiss So the judge has to actually deal with a motion to dismiss before she can deal with the case. It's a very long process. But the important thing I think to think about in relation to this, well, of course, we'll keep you up to date on this how things change. But this all happened during legislative committees at the very end of last session. And we all, those of us, many of us on this call who are paying attention, saw some of these things start to happen. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to even submit testimony on a couple of these issues. But the fact that you all watched this did help us know that these things were pending. We did see some of these. We saw glimmers of some of these at the very beginning of the session. It all ended up being a very different bill than we thought it would be. But you all play a very important role in keeping an eye on this process as observers primarily, and then as needed when we have the advocates come in as well for advocacy. So thank you for your work. And let's hope that we don't have to leave this next session with another lawsuit. Let's see if, not that there was anything differently we could have done last year necessarily, but let's just keep our eyes on the ball like we always do, and try to, keep an eye on what they're doing. So that's it.
Thank you, Jackie. Let's go on to Teresa. She's going to give us a brief update on where we are on the redistricting process.
Yes, thank you. Heavy on the brief. I am going to put a link in the chat to register for the event tomorrow evening. If anybody here has not yet gotten registered, this should be a really helpful tutorial on how to identify the areas of your community that need to be kept together in a district. They refer to it as communities of interest, but that's such a broad term and doesn't really identify everything that you may want to look at. So I am blessed to have some incredibly brilliant women on the People Powered Fair Maps Committee, and they are going to be leading a discussion, and it's going to be very interactive as far as they're going to have actual maps and tell stories of actual redistricting and testimonies that people gave and why, so that it's just hopefully not going to be as vague, but actually you can see what people may be talking about. And the whole idea is that it's up to us as community members to let our legislators know where we want those district lines drawn, where we don't want them drawn, and why. And so hopefully you'll come out of this session with more information, and I'm sure there will be a follow-up to this. And the key thing that we've been telling everyone is definitely reach out to the legislators on the committee, and you can still submit testimony on the Legislative Research website. So you're welcome to do that, and you can see all the testimony that's been submitted. But especially those legislators who are not on the committees, they need to be hearing from us as well, because they'll all be voting on the way that they draw the maps. So it's very important that we're knowledgeable. We need to lead the way. We need to bring our communities along, both our league members, other community members that aren't in the league, our partners. And we're real fortunate that we have partners like ACLU and Loud Light, who are also mainstream, who are also doing similar trainings. And a lot of times we're kind of interacting with them and providing some of that instruction as well. So there's the link. It is tomorrow evening from 6 to 7, which would be our regular People Powered Fair Maps group meeting time. And if anybody has not joined us in a meeting, we'd welcome you. Just reach out to me and I'll get you added to the mailing list. What else? We did hear from a judge or an individual that we wanted to be a judge for our mapping contest, which will be wrapping up here soon. And she is on parental leave and cannot commit herself to that, but we are trying to find some real savvy judges to help us judge the maps that are submitted. And so we'll speak more to that here soon. So any questions on that? All right. Thank you all for your support and all that you're doing in your local leagues.
Thank you, Teresa. That's really helpful. See, there's another meeting, isn't there, tomorrow night? Or let's see, Sunday, maybe.
Right, with ACLU.
Right, another one
Yeah.
Sunday, 4 o'clock with
Yes.
ACLU.
Yes.
Yeah, those are all great.
And I think
And-
Mary Galligan is helping with that one as well.
Right, I
going
saw
to-
that.
I'm going to go ahead and drop a copy of the link for that one to sign up for it in the chat as well. So, and it's it's Sunday, the 24th. So I'll put that in there as well.
Thank you, Martha.
You,
And I see Sharon Alsinger from Wichita has joined us, and Emma Doitry, and Karen Hummel was here. All right, on to Paul. Budget and revenue issues for 2022.
Couple quick comments about redistricting. You know, first of all, the governor's going to have a play in this year. So, you know, we'll see if the super majorities and the House and Senate hold together to push through their maps at this point. And secondly, we're still waiting for legislative guidelines that the House and Senate redistricting committees will adopt, I believe, in the first week or two of the legislative session that starts mid-January. And I would only say there was some press reports today, you know, Mainstream has been asking the legislature for more public hearings. And Speaker of the House Reichman said that they're in a planning stage. So we're going to see some more hearings supposedly this fall. And the other thing I would say about the guidelines is that the ones that were used for the last redistricting in 2011 had a phrase about, if at all, protect incumbent legislators in their district. So we'll see how all that plays out the first part of the legislature. So on to the budget and tax issues. Can folks pull up this state general fund profile that Steele sent out?
Can you get that, Olivia?
I am pulling it up now.
Thank you.
There we go.
So I know there's a lot of numbers in all this, and I guess it's important to understand how state fiscal years work in Kansas. So the third column is actual fiscal year 2021. That ended June 30th of this summer. And so now we're on to the approved fiscal year 2022 that runs from July 1, 2021 to June 30th of 2022. And what this all says is that, you know, with all the federal COVID money that came into Kansas, and so there was a lot of moving of, so some of the income taxes were moved from one fiscal year to another for, you know, during the last year during the COVID pandemic. So what's important is that first of all, the state general fund is what the state legislature really works on. This is about, if you can see for 2022, $8.3 billion is what the total adjusted expenditures were. And that's the total state budget is $20.5 billion. And you want to put that into a bit of perspective. divide that by 3 million Kansans, and per capita, it's about $6,600 if you want to look at it that way. But, and then there's a line that says ending state general fund balance is a percentage of expenditures. And this is something the legislators track pretty closely. And the ideal is to keep it above 7%. And so with all the extra federal money and the movement around of taxes, you see that it jumped 29% in 2021. It drops to 15.6% in the existing fiscal year we're in right now, and then it drops to 6.4% next in what's estimated for the next fiscal year. This is what they're going to be working on when they get back to Topeka in January. And even more important is the line below that, that's receipts above and below expenditures. So when you see under the 2022 category, that's a negative in, $801 million that expenditures are above receipts. And then for 2023, it's 765 million negative below what the receipts are. And so I guess what I'm trying to say in all of this convoluted effort is that while Republicans when in doubt always want to cut taxes, the projection for where this state budget's headed is that we don't have a lot of room to, because you go out to 2024 and you took $700 and some million off that 540 million ending balance, you can see where that gets us. So we'll see what kind of tax debate comes up in January at this point. I'd be glad trying to answer a few questions on this before we move on to legislative issues. Are we good to go, Seal?
Did Seal drop off the call? There she is. There you are, Seal. You're just muted.
Oh, okay. Yes, Paul, we're ready to go on to legislative issues.
Okay. I hope I didn't just bore people out of their minds in trying to understand what the revenue picture is going forward. A couple comments about legislative issues going forward. Kansas legislative sessions run on 2-year times. So it started in 2021, and then the second year is 2022. So where we're sitting now is that there were 454 House bills that were introduced in the 21 session and 315 Senate bills that were introduced. All of this is on kslegislature.org if you want to look under bills. And so those are, all of those are still potentially alive. Depends on whether committee chairs will bring up any of them at this point. So that's still existing legislation that can be moved or can be dealt with if committee chairs, make that choice. The other thing I would say is that there's a much greater number of interim committees this summer. For many years, the number of interim committees that were assembled to look at various topics were really lessened at this point, but for whatever reason, there's a number of those committees. And I guess the reason I mentioned that is that if that kind of background, if these legislative interim committees meet during the summer and fall and look at a particular issue, and there's a number of issues, and all of this is up on Kansas Legislative Research Department's website, then if they arrive at proposed legislation that would come out of these interim committees, those have a much greater chance of passing in the 2022 session because they've been looked at, they've been researched. It's kind of like you have a certain momentum that goes with those issues. So if legislation comes out of those, it's something to take a little more seriously. And then I listed vaccination, pandemic, health battles. I think we're in for, a long discussion in 2022 about what's the governor's power, what are the legislature's power, what are local government's power in terms of mask mandates and vaccination rules and blah, blah, blah. I mean, so I think they're going to spend, a fair amount of time on that. I mentioned, secondly, critical race theory. That's the latest imported cultural issue that, various conservative groups want to hang on to. And as a quick aside to that, I don't know how many of you might take the New Yorker, but there's an article by Jelani Cobb in the September 20th thing on it's called How Critical Race Theory Challenged the Status Quo. And it really talks about the founder and, what some of the basic issues are in critical race. There's also some battles in Johnson County about certain books that are unacceptable to certain forces in Johnson County. So are we going to see the legislature step in and make decisions about which books, school districts can buy or provide to their students? So I'll stop for a minute and see if we have any questions about those two items.
If you have any questions, speak up.
Does the state school board have any input on that?
That's a great question. I mean, that's obviously, the state school board has said that we don't teach critical race theory. So, and in terms of this whole question of, who controls masks for school students, and where does that power lie? Is that totally left to school districts? And some of the reporting has been that the school districts that had no mask mandates or didn't follow any of that had more cases of COVID than other districts. So and overall, I mean, I think it's a real question in Kansas. I mean, the State Board of Education is supposed to direct education, teacher certification and kind of curriculums and, set that out. But the legislature funds all of this. And there's a constant battle between the two. And over the last, few decades, there, I don't know, 3 or 4 efforts in the state of Kansas to vote on the ballot to whether we should do away with the State Board of Education, and that's always been voted down. So not sure where that all sits, and would this conservative legislature take a more direct approach to put that on the ballot? I doubt it, but I guess it's out there.
What would it take to get rid of the state school board?
It would take a constitutional amendment. It would take a vote. They would have to take it out of the state constitution.
And Paul, this is Janet. I read that Representative Karen, so I can't, her name kind of escaped me, Caryn, has already said that she is going to file legislation banning CRT being taught in the school, even if it's not taught in the school. So it's definitely going to be, it's probably in committee on those summer committees or the off-session committees you're talking about right now, right, being discussed?
That's a good question. I don't follow all the interim committees, so I don't, and education is not something that there are a lot of other people that are, I've not seen that, but it really gets into a question of how realistic or is our education going to be about, how we dealt with slavery, how we dealt with, the confiscation of Native American lands. In Texas, they passed a bill that said that you have to provide comments on both sides of all issues. So there was discussion about how do you teach the Holocaust? And in Texas, the school districts are saying, well, we have to provide books that deny that happened.
This is a shameless plug for the Johnson County League, but if on our YouTube channel, we have a really good program that we did in October on critical race theory. And one of the panelists is the reporter, Marae Rose Williams. She's a reporter for the Kansas City Star, who went to the Star and accused them of being complicit in racism. So she was a really good speaker. And our other speaker is a 20-year educator who's also with the Methodist Foundation. And we had a really civil and educational conversation about it. So Kathleen and I invite you to go to our YouTube channel if you're interested in. And we talked there about the Representative Karen and the legislation she is going to pre-file.
Could you put the link to your YouTube channel in the chat, Janet?
Sure, let me look it up and I'll do that.
Thank you.
Are there any other discussions on critical race theory or the school districts? Well, if not, we'll go on to housing proposals, Paul.
Right. So Kansas is in the midst of a statewide housing needs assessment. The first time we've done that in 30 years. So it's a firm that was hired out of Omaha, RDG, planning that may so they're supposed to come up with a report by the end of the year, and this advocate is hoping that part of the RFP that they bid on, should be part of this study, is how does Kansas compare to other states, and what are best practices in other states. And Kansas has quite a ways to go, and I won't go into all the details on that, but there need to be some policy proposals about improving the housing focus in Kansas, because we don't have any legislative committees. that have housing in the name, or, you know, it's kind of under economic development, but it's pretty well hidden. And I could go into more detail. We have a statewide housing agency. It's called the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation. You might have seen it with the, you know, they have a lot of money now for rental assistance, and they have commercials up, you know, on various TV channels. But it gets virtually no state general fund money. It's a semi-private public agency now under our bonding agency, the Kansas Development Finance Authority. So it's essentially out of sight, out of mind of most legislators. And somehow, with, you know, in the 1990s, there used to be a governor's commission on housing that would talk housing and talk, you know, various platforms and programs. And we somehow have to reintroduce the housing debate within the Kansas legislature and have a coordinated effort between the legislative and executive branch.
Do you see a way that might be done? Or do you see that it will be done?
I don't know, Seal. The few legislators that I talked to, you know, I've always been pleading about this. And we had a meeting with this RDG group and KHRC and the governor's office in the middle of June to talk about the connection between utility costs and housing and what really speaks to housing affordability. And I've been pushing hard with the governor's office and with KHRC that we could have a meeting, specific focus group in the next month or so with RDG to talk about very specific ideas about what Kansas could do to improve its, you know, housing options. I don't know if I've hit a stone wall on that. I don't know if that's going to happen. So, I mean, it's going to take some legislators putting a bill forward to jumpstart this debate. And, you know, I mean, and it's got to be bipartisan, and we've got to have some Republicans on board. And, you know, I don't know if I'm very hopeful about that.
Well, that's unfortunate that we can't make more headway on housing. We see so many people homeless.
Well, it's critical across the state. I mean, you know,
Right.
even the rural counties, those economic development directors and people are trying to do something as more and more, you know, counties lose population. You know, if they want to bring in light manufacturing, or they, you know, if they want to grow economically, housing is one of the first questions ever asked. So it really plays statewide. And Johnson County completed a survey with the same group, RDG, and you know, they're desperate to figure out how they can find housing for the workforce they need there. And so it touches, you know, I mean, if Kansas wants to grow, housing has to be, you know, an integral part.
Well, there used to be a housing department in the state, but you're saying now this KHRC has replaced the KDH basically?
Good question. We set up, it was in the early 90s under Governor Finney. We had our existing Kansas Department of Commerce, which we have today. And at that time, we added a housing division. So it was Kansas Department of Commerce and Housing. Mm-hmm. And so they came to the legislature yearly during the 1990s to, you know, to talk about housing, talk about economic development. It was kind of a blended approach. And then under Governor Sebelius, well, it wasn't. Also, at that time, Governor Bill Graves, who was 92 to 2000, had a governor's commission on housing. And so this, which had realtors and bankers and had all the right players at the table. And they would then bring issues to the legislature to consider for housing. And then they made the recommendation that Kansas needed more flexibility in housing programs. So they thought that we'd be better off if we had kind of a semi-public-private agency. So Sebelius took the housing division out of the Department of Commerce and set up what Kansas Housing Resources Corporation today under our bonding agency, KDFA. But I mean, as far as legislators are concerned, they might as well have moved it to the twilight zone, because they didn't. There was no state money going into housing. It was all KHRC was funded off fees and federal grants, and so it was just kind of a separate entity out there, and housing just fell off the political agenda.
That's all scary. In my viewpoint.
Well, yeah. Well, it's not just scary. I mean, it's fundamental, and that's what
Yeah.
legislators ought to be doing. I mean, that instead of these cultural war, tirades that but you need some, you need some advocates, you need some legislators, Democrats or whoever, to be asking those questions and proposing issues, and that's not what we're getting now.
Right. Well, speaking of the critical needs of Kansas, we go on to the water bills.
Yeah. Well, our Kansas Water Authority, which is the kind of planning entity, and then the Kansas Water Office have taken it on, and they're updating our state water plan in Kansas from 2014 and incorporating some of the ideas that Brownback had in his 50-year vision. And so they've, over the last 6-8 weeks, they issued their draft new state water plan for 2021, and seeking public comment until October 15th. And so they're going to take all the public comments and thoughts and issue an updated state water plan. And then the other thing I would say is, we're still woefully inadequate in how we fund the state water plan. And, we haven't settled on that. We barely, this last year, our state water plan is about $20 million. Compare that to what we spend on highways, which is $1 billion a year. I mean, if we're going to get serious about water, we're going to have to figure out how to fund the state water plan. We're going to have to figure out, we issued far too many water rights, particularly in western Kansas, over the Ogallala. So the Ogallala is declining. It's virtually a question of how quick is it going to decline, and what's the cost of the state of Kansas to buy back some of those extra water rights. And then the other really critical issue on water is that have capacity for public water storage. And that's where the water basis is for, certain eastern Kansas, Manhattan to Kansas City. And these reservoirs were built 30, 40, 50 years ago. a number of them are silting in from our monoculture agricultural system, which is a whole other question. Kettle Creek outside of Manhattan is about 45% filled in with sediment at this point. And so the fundamental questions about, where we go with water policy going forward.
Paul, this is Janet. Representative Ron Holman and Representative Lindsey Vaughn are on our chair and co-chair of the House Committee for Water. And they are using the month of November to do a big PR campaign, bipartisan campaign, to bring more attention to this. And in the middle of November, you might have the dates. I'm thinking the 16th and 17th. The governor is going to be hosting a 2-day conference on water in the state. So, and we have, again, another plug, but November 6th, the Johnson County League is hosting a pivotal role of water. And we've got Connie Owen is on the panel. We've got the River Keeper, Dawn Bueller, and we have both Representative Howland, I just lost Highland, and Vaughn.
Ron Highland.
Yeah.
And Lynn, yeah.
They'll be on the panel too. So, and in November, there will be a series of statewide conferences about water. So maybe as a general league, Seal, what would be the best way to share that information with everybody on this call if they wanted to follow the topic of water?
If you wanted to send me the information, I could email it out to everybody, or you could email it out to everybody. All the names, the email addresses are included in the.
Okay, is that appropriate? Because I'd be happy to mail it if that's all right.
It's okay with me. So unless Jackie or Martha think otherwise. I don't hear a no.
Well, no, I'm good with that. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I see from the time, we're a little past where we thought we might be. Kristen, do you want to talk about this upcoming legislative session and what you have in mind, or your tool that you developed?
Sure, I can do that. Most of you have probably participated in this before, but there has been a form on the LWVK website for reporting for legislative observers. And I think it was a fairly long form. So I took a look at it and tried to revise it. Olivia, do you have that there? Could you share that form?
Remind me which form it is.
I think I just sent it to you. It's the Legislative Observers Forum. There it is. Yeah, there it is. So it's pretty straightforward. Just so that we can...
Olivia, I grabbed it. Sorry, it's Martha. I just grabbed it.
You are good. Yeah, it didn't come through to my email fast enough.
You're good. You're all good.
Thank you, though. Yes. Anyway, there it is. I think that we have. Could you scroll down on there, Martha? Yeah. It's like 7 or 8 questions, mostly name, email, phone number, and then just a brief summary of your observations, any actions that you see. Those are the main ones that at the bottom. And then other comments or recommendations. So if you all, anytime that you observe a committee session or anything else that you think really needs to be put into this observation form, if you would put it there and just submit it, then it'll send to Olivia and Seal and me. And then, and I think, do you all have my phone number as well? Maybe, maybe not.
I don't think they do.
Okay.
I'm not sure where it would have been shared, Kristen.
Yeah, it may just be, I think Olivia got it to put it into the directory, but I don't know. Yeah, so I'm going to put it here for you guys. And I will email it to everybody as well. But if you would just save my phone number in your phones, you can text me with, if there's anything really important going on, a text is the best way to get in touch with me. And
Can we
then,
type right on that phone, Kristen? I mean, that form?
yes, yeah, you can, it'll be a link on the LWVK website. You click on that and you type right on there, and it'll send you a copy of what you send too.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. So, and encourage your fellow league members to get involved too. I think we'll probably be doing all of the observing virtually, unless you want to go to Topeka. But did you all have any questions for me? I haven't done this before, so I'm going to have a fairly steep learning curve. You all know a lot more than I do. So be patient with me and teach me along the way too, please.
And as Kristen said, we really are wanting to build up our observer corps again and really, get the numbers there, because obviously the league's interests are so wide and so varied. And as you all know, last session's perfect example. What started out as this bill became that bill, and that committee moved to the other committee, and it's like it's like a shell game, flipping them up and finding the P, and maybe it's there, maybe it's not. And so the more eyes, obviously, and ears we have focused on what they're doing, the better outcome we're likely to have to be able to then get with SEAL and come up with some actions, some advocacy, ways of advocating for our positions. So Kristen's going to do great. We have faith in her, and we know she's going to take off and do great on this. And we're also going to have this brought up on League Day to keep encouraging people to participate and to be those ears. And the one nice thing though, and Kristen, if people are, as she mentioned, this form is out there on the website. So it's not a matter of, well, I didn't attend the last meeting, so I couldn't possibly submit a form. Did you watch the committee? Yes. Did you hear about the bill? Yes. Submit the form. It's not a matter of, I'm not an official member of the Observer Corps. Hey, I saw what happened. I heard about this bill. I know this is a league's, this is up the leagues in their wheelhouse. I think we want to pay attention to this. Submit the form. Keep us aware. We're counting on that. So sorry, Kristen, I'm just cheerleading for you. I am. So I know you're going to do great at that.
Martha.
I know you're going to be awesome.
But yes, bring your friends, encourage people to participate, and educate them too. I know that you guys are a wealth of knowledge. I'm just listening to you right here. So yes, please bring them on.
As soon as you have in mind that people would sign up for either an issue, a bill, or a committee to watch this year?
Ideally, that would be great. So if you all have specific things that you're interested in, like Janet with water, it sounds like you have a lot of different ones. So if you have one area in particular that you're interested in, and you know that you're going to be following, if you would email me with that information, that would be really great. Just so that I can have an idea of who is going to be kind of tracking what. Or if there's a specific committee that you are like, that's mine, let me know that, and I'll put your name by that one. And I was just thinking when we were talking about this too, maybe it would be good to create a Google group for the legislative observers, so that we can have an email list, like a listserv, and then also we can have conversation within that group. Does that sound like a good idea to everyone?
Sounds like an awesome way to communicate.
Right.
So too, and once we have everybody established, that could also be something we add to the directory.
Okay, that'd be great.
Good idea.
Okay. Good deal. That's my husband.
He thinks it sounds boring. I heard him yawn.
He's all for it. Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's funny.
Okay.
Him and the dog right here.
That's wonderful.
Any closing thoughts or questions or comments or announcements?
Well, I know that it's not something that, you know, they're probably going to be discussing in great detail because it's already kind of a, as far as they're concerned, it's a foregone conclusion. But I hope that you all will be paying attention and will be out letting your voices be heard about value them both. This is critical for this upcoming year. So please, by all means, keep your eyes and ears open. We're really going to put together some advocacy and action on that issue and encouraging people to get out and vote no. So keep your eyes and ears open for that to be coming your way as well. So Sue will definitely be working with us and getting that stuff out. So we have a lot of work cut out. And then we have our work cut out for us in the next year. Imagine that. It's never a dull moment.
I think we might still have some of those business cards that we put together in the office. So if anybody wants to have some of those to hand out, just give us a note or give us a call or email. That was the one that said, let's see, it was vote no on August 22nd, 2022, and keep our Kansas women's constitutional rights. The misnamed value them both. Proposed constitutional amendment would allow the Kansas legislature to ban all abortion access in Kansas and most forms of birth control, which is really scary.
Seal, did the card say August 22nd?
Did I say that?
Yeah, and I thought, wait a minute, because I just told somebody it was August 2nd.
August 2nd is what the card says, 2022.
I thought
So I
we had
can't
those cards.
talk and do other things.
That's all right. I thought we had all those cards printed with the wrong date. I was like,
no, it's
no.
August 2nd, the first Tuesday in first
thank you
Tuesday
for
in
that.
August.
Do you know, guys, just an interesting note. I read an article that Ireland, the country of Ireland, did not allow birth control until 1985. Can you believe that?
And they didn't allow abortion until just in the last few years. And that was caused by the death of a lady who had a dead fetus, I believe, in her, and they wouldn't even allow her to abort the dead fetus. And so she died of septic complications.
It's just hard to believe, isn't it? So
It really
anyway,
is.
we think we're so modern, but the world is not as modern in thought as we think.
Right. And we've heard that there are people already drawing up bills to ban abortion and ban most forms of birth control. There are groups and people who think that any birth control that is not just a barrier, such as a condom or a diaphragm or abstinence, would be a form of abortion.
Right.
So
some of these people, you know, you're not dealing with just ideologues, you're dealing with a religious, faith-based belief. And for some of them, they believe that the only reason that you would have sex is to have children. So if you can no longer have children, I guess our husband should be sleeping in the other room. But anyway, that's what they believe. And so they don't believe in any kind of birth control. Just don't do it. It's kind of sad, but you know, so you have to understand the extremism that some of these people have. They're not just, you know, it to me, it's just so illogical.
yeah, right. We agree.
Yeah. It's just, you know, I find it illogical and just so far out. And but anyway, I just thought it's interesting that what we think we know of the world, and then we find out it was that way for how long?
All right. Thank you, Sharon. Is
Hey.
there anybody else that have comments? Paul?
I was gonna, Phil, should we consider a pre-session observers call for,
I think
I
that'd
don't
be
know,
great.
late December, first week of January, something like that, to see kind of how things are rounded into shape for the session mid-January.
Sounds
Yeah.
good to me. Do people have preference?
What about something like the 29th, Wednesday night? Obviously, we all made it here on a Wednesday evening. So maybe,
Would
would that be too late, or?
No, that would be fine, timing-wise.
would the 5th be okay? Actually, my sister is going to be visiting from California.
January 5th?
Yeah, would that be too late, Paul? Or
No. I mean, so I don't have the session date right in front of me, but I know it's past that. So
okay.
Okay, so how about if we shoot for January 5th?
Okay.
Say 5:30, is that what time we started tonight, 5:30?
Right.
Is that
Okay.
good with everybody?
All right, we'll go ahead and get it put on the calendar, and then when the time comes, Olivia can get a Zoom link set up for us and get it out.
That would be
So-
great.
All right.
It right now.
Okay. Thank you all so much for hanging in there. And we might be sending out some things earlier than that. But, and we'll definitely send out the recording for the group. So in case you couldn't be here or you missed part of it, that will let you tune in. All right. Thank you so much. If anybody else has comments?
Good to see everyone. Good to see all your beautiful faces.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care, be well.
Bye.
All right,
Bye-bye.
bye.